Ireland. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Porchlight Letters podcast number 2402. Today we are diving into what do school records tell us about childhood? Yes, a favorite topic of mine. School records are actually really cool. School records preserve glimpses of everyday childhood. Now, depending on where you are looking as to what school records are available, I know in the States, under Ancestry, you can actually access yearbooks, which is kind of cool. Going back, I found my husband in the different yearbooks from when he was in high school. So that was pretty cool to glimpse into that. I found his brother who had passed. I found his other two brothers as well. But having a look into people and it's an ongoing project. So that's one of those things with the yearbooks that you need to go back and check every few months to see what they've now uploaded, because it is a very large project when you think of all the schools around, especially high schools, that have yearbooks and how many pages some of those yearbooks have. And they're all getting scanned and uploaded and made searchable and everything else. So and in some places you can actually find you're going to find the attendance records. You can find the schools that they were registered in. There's all sorts of different things. If anybody is going through my stuff after I have gone, they will find a binder, and in that binder is every single school report I ever received. I kid you not. It even starts with my very first one, all the way through to when I left high school. Everything is in there. Every certificate I received in high school, every certificate I received at school, along with all the different school reports. And sometimes, we had two a year. So especially in high school. So all my grades are in there, and there's grades for effort, there's grades for actual work that we did, the average grade of your work. So if anybody's cleaning up after I'm gone, they'll find that. I'm eventually going to get them scanned in, but if anybody has the task of cleaning up after me and coming across that binder, they're going to get a huge glimpse into my childhood as to what I was like, what type of student I was at school, because the teachers all write comments in the notes area. So you've got the subject, you have your grades there on effort. I got a lot of A's for effort. And then there's the comments afterwards, like, and one of my moms, I get distracted a lot. I get distracted easily. But they're very good. It gives you a glimpse. So based on the type of where you are hunting, what school records are available online, some of them may not be available online. It could be a boots on the ground thing where you've got to go to a state archives, a county archives, because it depends on where those school records are kept. But they make for they do make for very interesting reading. I know I'm always interested in going back and reading mine and going, oh yeah, I forgot I did that. So attendance records reveal stability or disruption. Frequent absences may suggest illness, farm labor, or economic pressure. Now, a lot of schools, if they were in the rural communities where there was a lot of farming involved, especially in agriculture, the schools basically shut down when it was harvest time because there were no kids to come to school, because they were being used as labor on the farms to bring in whatever the produce was, bringing in, it was the harvest time. They were just bringing in the fruits, the vegetables, cutting the hay and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of times the schools would end at the beginning of harvest, and then they'll go back to school after that. Then they'll get into the planting season, and kids were required at home to help with the planting. If they were on an animal-based farm, then they might be required to be there to help with roundup or to help with calving season, when all the babies were due and all that sort of, all the baby cows and horses and all of the animals were being born, all the new ones were being born. So there could be different times like that too. Regular attendance often indicated family stability. Gaps in schooling can reflect wider family challenges. If a parent had died, or someone in the family had died, they may have been required at home to help in the home while the surviving parent went out and did whatever the past parent had done. So you got to think of that, what challenges were going on at that time. And when you look at those gaps, look at your family tree to see was there any indications of what was going on at that point in time that would require that child not to be at school. Report cards reveal strengths and personality. Teachers' comments sometimes describe diligence, curiosity, or behavior. Words like quiet, capable, distracted, or industrious bring personality into view. These remarks humanize ancestors at a young age. Yeah, mine definitely. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. School location reflects opportunity. Urban schools may have offered broader curriculum. Rural schools often required long walks or shared classrooms. The type of school attended reflects available opportunity. You may even have, there was one story, oh, I wish I could remember the name of that woman. There was this African American woman who, when she was a child, this teacher came to school. It's, if you've ever seen the movie Think and Grow Rich, this is a story from that. It's from Think and Grow Rich for African Americans, I think it is, or for Black people. Might be, I can't remember. It's got one of those two titles to it. But there was this teacher went to the school one day, and there's a child sitting there waiting on the steps. It turns out that this child would walk 5 miles every day to and from school to learn. And so the teacher asked if she had any siblings and why the siblings weren't coming. Well, the siblings were needed at home to help work the farm. And so this one was considered the smartest one, I think it was. And so that's the one that was sent to school to learn and then to go home and teach her siblings. This woman grew up to be one of the top teachers in the country. And which president was it? I'm trying to remember which president was in power at the time. I think it might have been Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt did this. And there was meant to be some event that was going to take place that was going to honor this teacher. And so Eleanor Roosevelt broke with tradition. She invited the woman to the White House so she could sit and talk with her. And then when it came to the event, she insisted that this teacher sit next to her. And that was completely unheard. They're like, no, man, we can't do that. And so she put her foot down and basically allowed that African-American teacher to come and sit next to her. It was not it was not to be done in those days, but they broke the mold for that one. But it's a very fascinating, and I'm just paraphrasing the whole story, but it's a very fascinating story, and just one of those ones that just sort of like hit me right here, like, wow, the dedication that this woman had to teach others from a very early age. And she followed that passion through her life of teaching children and making sure they got the resources and everything that they needed to do. So, if you've ever seen that, look out for the Think and Grow Rich movie. It's awesome. It pulls stories from all the different Think and Grow. There's different types of Think and Grow Rich books, and it pulls stories from all of them, and they have the actors acting them out, and it just brings them to life. And it's just like, wow, that is so cool. But let's see. Photographs capture social context. Class photos show clothing, posture, and peer group. If you're in New Zealand, your middle school and your high school, you'll all be in uniforms. You only get to wear regular day clothing for primary school, for the elementary schools. When you go to middle school or intermediate, as we call it here in New Zealand, or high school, you are in uniform. There are some high schools that when you get to a certain year in the high school, you are now allowed to switch. You don't have to wear a uniform. We cause a lot of mayhem on that one in our little school. So you get to see the clothing, the postures. A child standing barefoot among others in shoes may hit economic difference. I'm going to put a caveat on it. It depends on the country and the culture. In New Zealand, we have a lot of kids that walk around barefoot, and it's not because of economic difference. It's because that's what they're comfortable in. I never used to walk to school barefoot, but I did used to do cross-country running barefoot through some farms that had gorse and other things that could stab your feet as you were running. So I had to pick my way across the paddocks as I was running through those. Then you're running down a gravel road, then you're running down a footpath, the cement footpath up the hill onto the grass where they have these little weed things in that, what we call prickles into your feet. So there was time, and it wasn't economic hardship. That is how I chose to run, was in bare feet. Nowadays, I'm putting shoes on. My feet have gotten too tender and as I've aged. I guess it comes from years of walking around in the US with shoes on, that my feet need to be toughened up again to be able to walk barefoot out. I still walk barefoot outside to a degree. I just don't go on the grass. We have these weeds here that put these little tiny thorn things into your feet. We call them prickles. So yeah, you can walk around and get those in your feet. And my backyard is full of it. So yeah, I just don't go out there. Images. So remember the culture that you are looking at, because it could be that those standing bare feet, that's how they would walk around all the time. Images preserve social standing and environment. Graduation or withdrawal signals transition. Leaving school early may reflect necessity to work. A parent has died. The older children are now required to be at home or to go out and find a job to help provide for the family now that the spouse has passed. And if they're coming home to work in the home, it was usually the oldest daughter would then be told to get out of school, and she comes home and looks after the house because her mother had passed. If the father passed, it was usually the oldest boy that was then sent out to work to provide for the family. Continuing education may signal ambition or family support. Educational duration shapes life trajectory. And why all this matters is school records remind us that ancestors were once children with hopes and routines. And yes, some of them did walk uphill both ways. I always crack myself up because when we used to live just south of where I am right now, in Porirua, the first school I went to when I got there, because we had one that opened closer to us, and so I was required to switch schools. But the school that I had to go to when we first moved into the region, we lived on a hill here. The school was on a hill over here, so we had to walk downhill this way, then uphill to get to school. And then when we left school, we had to walk downhill past the intermediate and then up this hill to get home again. So we walked uphill both ways. Just one of those things. But it wasn't in the snow. Rain, yes. Hail, yes. Snow, no. Windy, yes. Practical takeaway from this: look beyond names on school lists. Study attendance, comments, and context. And if you want help interpreting school records, send us a private message and we can set up a 30-minute discovery call that is free. There is no obligation to purchase any services after that, and we can spend that 30 minutes helping you interpret school records. And in closing, just remember that every ancestor once carried books instead of burdens. And with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll be back tomorrow evening around 6 p.m. Pacific. And I'm saying around because tomorrow, oh no, hang on. Not Sunday here, Saturday over there. No, we're fine. We're back at 6 p.m. Pacific tomorrow.